And what a journey we have been on. Hey, everybody, I'm Nick Valencia. Welcome to Nick Valencia Live. It is Tuesday, February 24th, and we're live from Mexico City. We're here at the Thomson Reuters Bureau here in Mexico City to be on a panel tomorrow to talk about new media and to just kind of discuss being one of the top new media journalists in Latin America. It's really exciting to be here. I love Mexico City. And it's, I guess I should start by just saying shout out to Thomson Reuters for the invite and for also letting me use this facility. It's super cool to be back in a newsroom. I've missed the huddle. I've missed just being around other journalists and just seeing the spirit of, I have no idea what they're working on here behind me, but it all seems really cool. And it's just really, it's so energizing to be back around other journalists. And so we're here for a discussion on February 25th. Reuters has done a lot of these different events all across the country, from London to Berlin, Tokyo, New York. And this is only the second one that they've done with content creators. I still consider myself a journalist, but I think traditional media journalists probably see me more as a content creator. I don't know why my nose itches so much. As a content creator, but we are working within the margins of editorially anyway, within traditional media and just bringing this over to the new media landscape. And then in the spirit of that, we've been on the road for several days now. And that's where I want to start. I have been along the U.S.-Mexico border, spending time in El Paso. And it was over the course of the last 3 days that I went into the Camp East Montana, which is reported to be the largest detention center in the country in terms of how many detainees they have there. I spoke to several people who were in custody, and what they described to me were just absolutely horrific conditions. And we'll get into those with the stories that we covered there. But really the headline is that there's some sort of a infection or fungal virus that is spreading right now and has been for the last several months. The detainee who I spoke to, I won't reveal her name to protect her identity, she told me that in the room that she's in, there's at least 3, maybe 4 women who have this virus, this fungal infection all over their body, from their legs, their feet, their genitals even. And it's painful, it's red, it's itchy, and they have no idea what it is. They have been able to see the doctor. The doctors there tell them that it is just a fungal infection. We have heard similar reports. What you're looking at here is a report, one of those reports from El Paso outside of Camp East, Montana. We have heard similar details emerge from other detention centers around the country, and they have been categorized as a scabies outbreak. Now, I asked the detainees and even the guards, some of who I got this information from, and they said they hadn't heard that word. They hadn't heard that characterization. But it sounds very similar to what other outbreaks that we've seen. The bottom line is here, it is, the hygiene is not something that, they want to be living in. They don't know whether it's the soap, whether it's the water. The water, they say, sometimes it comes out brown. The soap, they think maybe it's an allergic reaction. But talking to other medical professionals, people in the public health field, it sounds like a viral infection that's very, very contagious. And to a lot of people, it sounds very similar to the reports of scabies that we've heard come out of Camp East, Montana. The other headline that we heard is that at least 2 men, are on a hunger strike right now. And this is something that should piss off both Republicans and Democrats. We talk a lot about the moral outrage and talk about how journalism is a moral beacon. It's also one where we uncover the details of financial corruption and be very clear about what's happening here. The 2 men who are on hunger strike, I know at least one of them started their hunger strike because they asked for a voluntary deportation and they haven't been able to get it. They asked for this voluntary deportation more than a month and a half ago. And according to the people I talked to, not one of them was currently on this hunger strike, but they said that this individual had started the hunger strike, several days ago. It could have been over a week ago, and that there's at least one other person who is also on this strike as well. And so you have those details emerging from there, along with all the stories that we've heard. This is the same facility where earlier we heard that there was a homicide report there, that an inmate initially, the reports were that he choked on something. After the coroner reviewed it, it was determined that it was a homicide, that it was potentially a strangulation. And no one has answered for that. There have been absolutely no consequences for that. One of the other takeaways that I had, if you want to play this report that we had about a hysterectomy here and a woman having her uterus removed. This was just shocking. and I don't use that word lightly. And this is a report I
spoke
want
to a
you to consider.
detainee, and what they told me was just absolutely horrific. About 2 weeks ago, according to this detainee, there was a woman in custody here who was bleeding profusely from her vagina, and she was taken to the hospital. It was determined that they had to remove her uterus, and she had her uterus removed. They said that that woman is now back inside the facility and is recovering. It is just one of the many horrific circumstances that they're dealing with inside. Food is also an issue. They eat the same thing every single day. After 5 o'clock, they're given one tortilla, and they don't eat after 5 o'clock. They've gotten to this point where they are basically taking fruit from their lunchtime. They get a banana or they get an apple, and they're trying to save that for a late night snack. But the guards have caught on to that, and what they're doing is they're now doing random searches in those cells, and they're throwing away the stuff that they save for later. The conditions are horrible inside there, and I've never been to a concentration camp, so I can't say that, but I can say that this area here outside very much so feels like a POW camp. These kinds of rocks here are sort of the landscaping, dirt road, desolate area, a lot of barbed wire, chain link fence. The tent structures are white. It gives this feeling that's very uncomfortable. I talked to a guard inside, and she said it psychologically messes with her. We didn't get into why she's still working here, even if she's having that impact, but this is clearly having an impact on those not only being held, but also those working, doing the guarding.
And most of those guards are Latino. And you look at the demographics of El Paso, it makes sense. It's a city. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I mean, looking at everybody just anecdotally, it's about 95% Latino. So it makes sense if they're pulling employees from that area that the guards would be Latino. But it's clearly having a psychological impact on them. They said that to me directly. There was a Latina guard there, who I just spoke about in that report. We didn't get into why she's still working there, but she says every day she comes in and, it has a toll. When I was leaving the last time this facility, they were talking about trying to put up art or pictures. It's a very sterilized environment, as I described. Sterilized is not the right word. It looks very sort of clinical and void of emotion. It's all white. There's a lot of metal structures. You walk in and the landscaping are those big rocks. It's a dusty dirt road, desolate area. And those white makeshift tents, those temporary tents really evoke this feeling of, just really uncomfortable feeling to think of what's going on behind those closed doors. We see those viral videos and then they end. We see how people are treated out in the open. We've seen white Americans being shot and killed on the streets of Minnesota. And if we see that with our own eyes in the public, what is happening behind closed doors in these detention centers, in these detention facilities? It was so important for us to connect. And another thing I want to talk about is I went and I spoke to a detainee yesterday. For those who have loved ones impacted by President Trump's mass deportation policy, it is very, very important that you hear what I'm going to say next. Everyone who's in custody right now has the right to a habeas corpus petition. I am not a lawyer, but I've covered immigration for more than 20 years, and I know that many migrants in custody don't know that they can do this. Effectively, it's a Latin translation to presenting the body in front of a judge. Everybody who's in immigration custody, in detention, has the right to put out a habeas corpus petition. One of the detainees who I spoke to had no idea what that was, and I'm grateful that I was able to, sort of educate him on what his rights were and what they are, granted here in this country. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to be released. It doesn't guarantee that you're even going to be seen in front of a judge, right? I mean, this is a backlog, but it is a way to expedite getting your due process when we are in a time and an era when due process is being thrown out the window, when constitutional rights of journalists, independent and traditional legacy media journalists, are being violated, when the feds are targeting press freedoms, when this now is a weapon, the phone. Because what's happening there on the streets, and we heard in congressional testimony from a whistleblower, it is unconstitutional, and these agents are being trained to defy the Constitution. It's unlawful. And it takes people like us, independent journalists. It takes people out there like you, because everyone's going to have to step up sooner or later as an individual in this country. I truly believe that. And it takes us to document it. So we're grateful to be out there, grateful to talk to detainees. And the last thing, to land the plane on this discussion before we get joined here by Kristian Ramos, who's going to give us an update with the State of the Union. We were also doing an investigative report out of Walmart, and we decided to do it there at the Cielo Vista Walmart, where there was a racist attack by an individual who was targeting the Latino community. More than 20 people were killed in August of 2019 when a man went in and he was allowing people who were not Latino to live. And he was asking people if they were, and if they were, he would shoot and kill them. And so we were in El Paso and decided to pursue this story that we were investigating on Walmart since August, which shows that they have quietly helped build the surveillance infrastructure that ICE is using to conduct its targeted enforcement operations. I want to play you this clip and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Walmart has quietly helped build the surveillance infrastructure that ICE is using to conduct its targeted enforcement operations. Let me tell you what I mean here. Years ago, there was an uptick in crime at Walmarts across the country, and they thought the remedy would be to fund community grants to police departments and foundations with the sole purpose of using that money to fund flock cameras or license plate reading cameras. And according to the organization deflock.org, there's one of those cameras here at the El Paso Walmart along Gateway Boulevard. Flock has not only continued to put those cameras up, they've sort of expanded what they're being used for. They went up with the intention of being used to fight crime, but now they're being used to fight immigration violators. That's exactly how they're being used here now under President Trump. Now, we reached out to Walmart to get comment on this. They would not say anything on the record. They said a lot of stuff off the record. But as I told them, it would strain common sense to think that the money that they spent on these cameras doesn't have a through line now with the data that police departments are using from those cameras and sharing now with ICE so they can conduct their targeted enforcement operations here at Walmart.
So if you follow along there, Walmart had a crime problem, and they thought the remedy would be to put all these flock cameras, these license plate readers, in and around Walmarts. They funded police foundations, community grants with the sole purpose of putting these cameras up, these flock cameras. And they said, here you go, police departments, come put them up around our facilities. And they claim plausible deniability that we don't know what's happening with the data used by these cameras. We're just putting this money out there for the foundations to put them up. And as I mentioned in my report, it would strain common sense to think that there's not a through line between the money spent. Walmart literally paid for these cameras that are now being used by ICE. They don't own the cameras, ICE. They're using the data that's being shared with them by the local police departments who put these cameras up with money given to them by Walmart. Walmart, of course, America's largest retail store. They were unwilling to go on the record with me. They were unwilling to go on background with me. And they said a lot off the record. I am honoring that agreement of what off the record is. And that means, I'm not going to tell you what they told me. But it's deeply frustrating for me to know that this is just another example of this sort of blueprint that we have in corporate America, where the president of a company gives directives to a middle manager who then carries that out, and the president never is named or gets in trouble. There's never any consequences. There's deniability. There's enough distance between the person at the top and the person that ends up getting it from their orders that they could say, hey, we don't have anything to do with this. It's bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. And we know what it is, and we're calling it out. And if I was still in the mainstream and traditional media, I know that I probably wouldn't be able to do that story, because son los ricos apoyando a los ricos, los dueños de estas empresas that are helping each other out. Think about that and consider that. You guys should be angry too, because it's your tax dollars at play here. I am going to be joined now on Pivot Hard here from my reporting on the border to, and by the way, if you guys are just joining us, we're in this beautiful office here, Thomson Reuters, the Bureau for Mexico City. We got an event coming up. I'll speak more about that later, but we've been letting Kristian Ramos wait long enough. Kristian, come on in here, man. Welcome to the show. Here, we can get you on the stage here. Add to the stage. There we go. I'll do that. There we go. How are you, brother?
I'm good. You're missing all of the snow and the blizzards in America right now. That's smart. Good for you. But yeah, it's a crazy time right now. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah, shout out to I should start with shout out to Congressman Jimmy Gomez, man. I got invited to the State of the Union, but I'm here doing this event.
What?
It's boo-hoo, right? Boo-hoo that I'm not going to be there. But what an honor, man. What an honor to just, be invited.
That's incredible. You know what? Having worked in the Senate and the House, I've never gone to the State of the Union. So you're ahead of me there, buddy. That's incredible.
Well, it is pretty clear to me that there are progressive members of the Progressive Democratic Caucus, Congressional Caucus, that are taking this sort of strategy of inviting content creators, independent journalists to be there at the State of the Union. There's a ton of them there right now. I saw Jolly Good Ginger, I saw Cats on Couch, Carlos Eduardo Espino, the list goes, Aaron Parnas, the list goes on. And so I didn't know that was happening, but I wonder if it's sort of a coordinated effort by the Dems to sort of say, hey, look, these are our folks that, are really putting out accurate information out there, and we want to, celebrate them. So I don't know. I mean, that's just a total speculation, but.
Well, we're in the social media age, right? This is the president who, I think more than any other in the history of our country, invites, this type of interaction and I think it'll be very interesting because we know that this guy is going to lie explicitly about everything, and I think he's going to lie about two things. He's going to lie about the economy, and he's going to lie about immigration. And I think what's fascinating is they're connected. In my mind, his lies about the economy, his lies, number one,
they're going after our workforce. I mean, I was just talking to the Uber driver on the way here, and he's like, do you guys not understand in your country that you're destroying tu mano de obra? Why are you going after your workforce?
So I think that's absolutely right. And I want to like thread the needle even in an even finer point. He is going to deny that costs are rising. He's going to say that his tariffs, right, his taxes on the American people on their goods are completely paid for. His illegal tariffs, right, at the same time as he is deporting all of the people who are actually picking our crops and who are working in our hospitals and are taking care of our family members in retirement homes and so on and so forth. And so he's really hurting the economy. And I think what's fascinating on the tariff piece is those are illegal. If they're illegal and those are taxes on the American people, they should give money back to the American people. There was a study that just came out that basically said that every American basically had to pay $1,000 plus on their groceries this year, on their take-home things that they needed to survive. The Trump administration should give that money back to the American people. He keeps saying that they're making all of this money off of these tariffs, off of all of these taxes. Wonderful. Okay, you're making that money. Give it back to the American people.
Well, we initially heard that he might, there was rumors. People still remember the stimulus checks. They think that that's why they voted for him in 2024. I have some friends who were like, those Trump stimulus checks, remember those? And then we heard more recently, well into his, into Trump 2.0, that we potentially, all Americans, were going to get like a $2,000 check or something like that.
So Scott Dissent was just recently on a television program here in the United States, one of the Sunday shows. They asked him point blank, they said, what's going to happen to this money now that this has been deemed illegal? He said, we're going to keep it. We're going to keep it. That's it. He doesn't say what we're going to do with it. He doesn't say what the government's doing with it. It's just going to go into the pocket of this administration, I guess. And what is equally fascinating here is this is the most corrupt administration ever, right? These guys, all of the businesses that Trump's sons owns, they're all cutting deals with, Saudi Arabia, with whoever. So they are getting filthy rich off of the administration, and the money that they should be using for the American people, who knows where it's going? Who knows where it's actually
not just the Trumps either that are getting rich off this. I mean, we're about to release a report that shows that Tricia McLaughlin's husband, who runs a PR agency, signed a very sweet deal with the federal government for, to make some money. So it's like, okay, it's not just the Trumps that are enriching themselves. It seems like it's just people that are in their orbit. And of course, hey, look, this happens with every administration. If we deny that there's some sort of nepotism that happens, I think we're naive at best and dumb at worst, and sort of, I know that it happens regardless of whether it's Republicans or Democrats, but it really does seem to sort of be flying in our face right now. I mean, you talk about, just to go back to the economy stuff, I think about, you were making your point. I think about that meme that goes around during Thanksgiving. Que dice, dile gracias a Jesus, for picking your, thank you, Jesus. And he says, de nada, and it's a guy out there in the fields who's literally picking the food, and, I spent time with the grape pickers in Central California. It is a group that they don't understand because, they believe in God, they're conservative, they go to church, they're against abortion. They are conservative in a lot of ways, and they don't understand why they're being singled out. And then, if we flip to the economy part of it and the money portion, it's these people that are paying into your parents, my parents' Social Security, and they're never getting those taxes back in return. And yet they pay all of this money. Like this one immigrant who I spoke to, $50,000 in taxes she paid last year, and she's deported now. She's here in the country with me in Mexico,
Well, and I think, again, let's take it a step further back. Who gets hurt the most? The American taxpayer, the people who benefit, right? Their Social Security number, the amount of money going into Social Security, that increases. The people who are able to, afford their groceries, things like that, they are the ones that are being hurt by Trump's illegal immigration practices, illegal tariff practices, all of these things. The law and order Republican Party. Look, congressional Republicans, they say they love the law. They say they love the free market. I don't understand. This is a literal pay to play. These tariffs, right? Donald Trump literally says, you know what? Sweden, you have a 20% tariff. The president of Sweden shows up with a fucking gold bar and gives it to him. And Trump's like, oh, you're back to 5% now. It's okay. Everybody's okay. Meanwhile, Johnny Q. Public gets fucked, right? His voters, people, they're losing their health care. They're losing all of their abilities to pay for groceries and things like that, because again, those tariffs, those pay to plays for Trump.
What happens too, it's like inflation goes up, and then these costs, we're not really dealing with like these products coming in a shortage like we were during COVID, but we got used to these COVID prices. And it's like, once companies get used to making certain money, you think that they're going to do the moral thing and say, no, we don't want to make more money than we did last year. Let's put the prices back down. No, those prices are going to stay the same, and we're going to suffer.
But it's even worse than that, because not only are we suffering, but these major corporations are getting richer, and the Trump administration is like, hey, you guys are my buddies. Go ahead. I mean, like, I want to take you back to when he was elected. That that original inauguration, you have Mark Zuckerberg, you have Jeff Bezos, you have Elon Musk. He let a freaking billionaire take all of our personal information to shrink the size of the government. Guess what, folks? The government is bigger than it's ever been in the history of this country. Our deficit is larger than it's ever been in the history of this country. So,
and on that point, we gave a lot of credit to Elon Musk and his team of 6 young kids being so smart. They were fucking doing algorithms, man. They were doing algorithms.
They were literally using AI to decide what was going to get cut versus. I'm like, again, this guy is a billionaire on his way to being a trillionaire. Like, how does that help the average American? I don't understand.
Let's get back to the focus here of the State of the Union, because that's today, that's later today. You talked a little bit about him going to be lying again, President Trump lying on the economy. You expect him to lie on immigration. What do you expect? Because my mom and I were talking, and she's like, hey, there's a lot of Democrats that aren't going to go. I was talking to my friend Dennis, who supports President Trump, and he was like, what message are you sending here to boycott this? Like, how un-American is this to not go out there and actually just go to the State of the Union? So what do you expect later today?
I think the official position from leadership is that if you're going to go, you should be respectful. If you're not going to be respectful, then don't go. And so I do think there is an element of respecting the speech and what's happening. And do they need to be in the room to hear what he's saying, to understand what he's saying? No, they can watch it on TV like everybody else. And I think
energy is real, man. I want to be there. I'm sad I'm missing out. I really do. Because look, even if President Trump doesn't respect the title and the office, I do. And so that's why I still call him President Trump. This to me was such an honor to be invited, whether it's a Republican giving the address or a Democrat giving the address, just to be there and to hear the commander in chief. Look, like it's a very special thing, right? And so I don't know, I'm glad that you think that that's the messaging from the Democrats. If you're going to go, be respectful, but what do you really expect to happen though?
No, look, I think he is going to go in there and he's going to present an alternative reality vision of what is happening in America. But I think the problem that he's going to run to is it's going to be 3 buckets. It's going to be the economy, tariffs, immigration. And as I understand it, he's going to try to talk about affordable health care. And I hope he does. because what they have done to healthcare costs in this country is unprecedented. And in addition to slashing, vitally needed healthcare for all Americans, the people that are going to get hit the worst are Republicans, which is why these moderates in the House who are up for re-election are pushing him to say, okay, what is your plan? I'm going to give you guys a preview of the speech. He has no plan. They have no plan. He keeps saying that they're going to lower prescription drug prices. Guess what? They're increasing. Why? Because these guys don't believe in ever reining in these corporations, and they let them do whatever they want. And so the healthcare costs are increasing. Your healthcare coverage is decreasing, and the American people, the worker is taking it in the shorts like never before.
Yeah, and if you're just joining us, you're joined by Democratic strategist Kristian Ramos, who's a friend of the show, has been on. He's given us a preview of what he expects to see tonight in the State of the Union. A real smart take, man. I want to pivot now to what's happening here in Mexico and the killing of El Mencho. There is a lot of speculation that there might have been some U.S. involvement potentially, that this is, has President Trump written all over it. I know from covering El Chapo in the past, that there is a reluctance in information sharing. And even here among agencies, La Marina doesn't like to share information with the federal police or with Interpol. They try to keep things very close to the chest. What are you hearing about any sort of U.S. tie or involvement to the killing of Cartel Nueva Generación de Jalisco leader El Mencho?
So I hear two things, right? Broadly speaking, I hear that, in times past, there was a great reluctance to do this because of the instability that it could cause the country, but that there was a fear that, Donald Trump kept threatening to launch airstrikes into Mexico unless there was action taken. And so that this is sort of a reaction to that. And then I think the other piece here, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do think there is an element of the tariffs, the trade arguments that we're seeing here, that's the other, I guess, carrot and the stick for these ongoing negotiations between this administration. I mentioned before that Trump sort of seems to be arbitrarily levying these tariffs. I think part of the promise of keeping the tariffs low is stopping the flow of fentanyl into the United States, which is something that these cartels have only started recently doing. And so I do believe there is an economic imperative here to not have the United States levy these tariffs against Mexico, their largest trading partner in the world. I think people forget a place like Texas does billions of dollars in trade as a state alone with Mexico. So there's a lot of real geopolitical pressures with one of our biggest binational trading partners.
It's interesting that you bring up fentanyl because Luis Chaparro, who is supposed to be on the show here today, but he got sent to Tijuana. He's also, in full disclosure, part of this Thomson Reuters discussion that we're going to have here on the 25th. He put out some reporting about a new narcomanta that was put out in the Plaza of Ciudad Juarez. Juarez at one time, I cut my teeth covering the drug cartels. There was 8.5 murders on average there per day. It was labeled back in 2010s as one of the most dangerous cities, more dangerous than Kabul. There was a new, and violence has calmed down. It's no longer synonymous with the violence that we saw previously, the double-digit deaths, the federal police being targeted and killed. There was a new narcomanta put up, according to Luis Chaparro's reporting, that single-handedly pointed out fentanyl distribution. And it was not clear what cartel it was from, but it basically said anyone who's trafficking fentanyl, anyone within our organization who's caught with fentanyl, we're going to kill you. And, so it's really interesting to hear your take on, this fentanyl take and the cartels getting involved and this new narcomanta being put up, according to Luis Chaparro. Are we going to see renewed violence in a place like Ciudad Juarez? Is this going to spread? Because if you were looking at U.S. national media, you would have thought the entire country here of Mexico was on fire when it was really just Guadalajara and Jalisco, the state of Guadalajara.
So it's interesting that we're having this conversation because I have a really good friend, Alberto Mejia. He's living in Mexico right now with his family. And he had the best line. So I want to make sure to attribute it to him. He said, it's really tough being Mexican American because in the United States, you have ICE harassing you. And then you go to Mexico and you got the fucking cartel also harassing you. So, but he's down there. And he was telling me that in the town that he's in, they've had to stay at home, for all American citizens. And so he's down there with his family and he can't leave his house. He hasn't left his house for the past 3 days, and he's been trying to figure out how to feed his food. And it's sort of like he hasn't done anything. And he was saying it's really crazy. Again, this is all secondhand knowledge, but he was saying that somebody told him that they were on a bus riding around, and somebody from the cartel just came onto the bus and said, "Hey, everybody out! We're gonna set this bus on fire and leave it on the side of at an intersection." And they were saying,
my phone, because this is what I saw repeatedly on the way over here. Look at this. You see this? This is just on the streets. I mean, I thought I was going to see this stuff in Ciudad Juarez, and I've seen more federal police on the streets here. And this is in like the nicer areas, places like Polanco, and I'm just, around Roma area. And like, this is the reality here. This is what people are waking up here today in Mexico City. Is this normal? Yeah, they're getting used to it. This is not, something that we see on the streets of US, but to your point,
Well, he made a really good point, or whoever was talking to him made this good point, which is basically saying that the cartel in these towns are very explicit, like, we want nothing to do with you. We're not going to harm you, but if you're on these streets, we are, and there's something that happens with the government, that's our enemy. That's who we're going to go after, and we're going to use this bus to intimidate. But like, we're not going to harm you in any way. And I thought that was really scary and interesting. And then I think the last point I'll make on this is one thing that he was surprised by is that the level and the ability for the cartel to just shut the country down.
Yeah.
That if they really want to, they can go out there and you saw that. That's everywhere, right? I mean, if you're lucky enough to have a police presence, but again, people are like, he went to go get groceries and the guy was like, "What are you doing out of here? Like, go back. This place is shut down." And I think that's remarkable, in the year of our Lord 2026, that a country can be shut down by a drug syndicate. That's, scary.
Yeah, it is really scary. And, you talk to certain people here and they say that, it's the cartels that really have the power here in this country, and especially in these local municipalities. I have not covered the narco war in a number of years, but when I was heavy into it and was CNN's cartel reporter, it was the kids that used to play cops and robbers, and the robbers were the good guys and the cops were the bad guys in Ciudad Juarez. It was so, I remember being in Almoloya de Juarez in the state of Toluca, or outside of the state of Toluca, and after Chapo had gotten out and going into that rural countryside area and interviewing people, and they were like fans of El Chapo. Now, I also want to say here, there are people who may not understand this. There was an era and time where you wouldn't even say El Chapo's name out loud if you were in the United States or in Mexico. You wouldn't even whisper his name. That is not the same for El Mencho. It's not, I don't have any fear of saying El Mencho's name in the Thomson Reuters Mexico City Bureau, right? Like, he wasn't as inextricably linked with society as Chapo was. I mean, Chapo was every level and facet of, from the municipal police to the federal police to the National Guard to the army. It had infested to the point where you didn't know who was working for him and who wasn't. That's not the case with this new cartel leader. I'm sure there are people that could speak more intelligently on it than myself, and people who have been more involved, like Luis Chaparro. We were really interested in having him on. But it's fascinating, Kristian, just to be here in the days after such a significant watershed moment in this country, and to sort of see, going from the border to Mexico City and to kind of seeing how things are happening here. I'm going to run here. I've got some stuff to get to, but is there anything I haven't asked you that you think is important to know, or anything that you'd like to talk about, man? Here's your chance.
No. I was just chuckling because I wouldn't have gone to Mexico right now. I would have gone to the State of the Union. So I wanted to say thank you, Nick, for doing whatever you're doing in Mexico.
Right?
I would have gone to the State of the Union, but God bless, buddy.
Yeah, brother. Hey, look, someone's got to do it. Estamos en la lucha para nuestra comunidad, man. Like I said to the Uber driver over here, estoy usando mi privilegio para luchar para mi comunidad, man. Like, they're persecuting our community. And to me, it's very clear where my morals stand. I'm not part of this great myth of objectivity in traditional media. I don't think any journalist I've ever met in my life is objective, and I will die on this hill. And I'm sorry if that's offensive to you, but it's part of our great power and privilege that we are uniquely ourselves. And I bring that to every single story I do now. And so I'm grateful for you, man, and grateful for your intelligence and your intellect. And yeah, man, land the plane here.
Last one. Here's my last little plane. Here's my call at the State of the Union. President Donald Trump, congressional Republicans, Senate Republicans, House Republicans, give the American people back all of the money that you tax them with in this tariffs, right? $1,700, whatever that is, right? Give that money back, lower costs, give people their health care back, or join Democrats and find solutions for them. That's simple. Thank you.
Kristian Ramos, Democratic strategist based in Washington, D.C., friend of the show, man. God bless you, brother. See you next time.
Very much. Bye.
All right. That was Kristian, man. And that's our show for today. We're going to wrap up here. We've got some projects to tape, and I feel like I might be a little too loud here for the Thomson Reuters office here. But so excited to be joining this panel. If you guys missed it at the top of the show, I'm in Mexico City at the Thomson Reuters Mexico City Bureau, because tomorrow I'm speaking on a panel. I'm speaking to a collection of journalists from around the world, Latin America mostly, to talk about being one of the best new media journalists in Latin America. It's so crazy to say this stuff, man. And also thank you again to Congressman Gomez of the 34th District for the invitation. I'm so sorry I couldn't be in DC at the State of the Union. I will be watching tonight, as I'm sure all of you guys will. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for helping us make truth go viral. And for those of you guys watching on replay, man, thanks for watching on replay as well. All right. Have a great day on purpose, guys. We'll see you next time.